Hi, welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Sarah Peternell. I'm the owner of Family Nutrition Services in Denver, Colorado, and I'm also the creator of a 30-day online program for people with Hashimoto's. It's called Nourished and Renewed with Hashimoto's. Today, I'm doing another case study. I'm so excited about this series of videos. The last one was about whether or not having Hashimoto's can make you feel irritable. You can check out that video as well. Today, the question is whether or not menopause plays a role in the change to your thyroid hormone production or an increase in anti-thyroid antibodies. It's a pretty packed question, I realize that. Today's case study is focusing on a woman who came to see me in my practice. Her name is Anne. I'm using fake names to help protect the innocence of my clients. But actually, I have quite a few clients like Anne. So today's case study is actually about Anne, but it's also about the many perimenopausal and menopausal women that come to see me in my nutrition practice. So Anne was in her late 40s and she was noticing a few things about herself, about her general health, that had started to decline. At first, they just seemed like minor complaints. In fact, the interesting thing about Anne was that she'd come to see me for nutrition because she actually previously had been in a really great place with her overall health. She was exercising regularly. She knew quite a bit about the natural options for healing her thyroid and eating for optimal thyroid health. And she'd been working really hard already on her stress management, her self-care, and a lot of the lifestyle practices that you've heard me talk about in my videos. So Anne came because there were a few things that she wanted to tweak, but after we did some digging and some uncovering of some of these seemingly like annoying complaints, we actually realized that they were a little bit bigger than we thought. As I said, Anne was in her late 40s and she'd always been pretty fit. She'd always had exercise really at the foundation of her routine for maintaining optimal wellness. What Anne had started to notice recently was that there were some changes in her physique. I find this interesting. Despite lifting weights, having cardiovascular exercises 2 or 3 times per week for 20 to 45 minutes each, and also a good home practice of yoga and stretching to help keep her muscles supple. Within a short period of time, Anne noticed actually that she experienced a sprained ankle. Then she had a fractured wrist. Then she actually went to see her doctor and noticed that she had a low bone density score. Finally, she was also just feeling like despite working out, she didn't have the same strength in her large muscle groups as she previously had. She noticed that even lifting a couple bags of groceries would cause her upper body to feel weak. And sometimes after a hard workout, she would spend days recovering, taking ibuprofen and using ice packs, and she just felt like she was getting old really quickly. Now, in addition to these annoying symptoms, which Anne had chalked up to just getting older, Anne also noticed, to her dismay and to her husband's dismay, that her libido was in the tank. It had been several years since Anne had really started to notice that it wasn't with the same amount of frequency or intensity of desire that she enjoyed being physically intimate with her husband. And little by little, those feelings were getting harder and harder to conjure up. She knew that her libido was suffering, and she also knew that it was taking a toll on her marriage. So the thing about Anne with her Hashimoto's was that these other symptoms that she had been experiencing, she did not associate in any way with Hashimoto's. What actually she noticed was that when she went for her physical exam and had her blood work done for her thyroid, she had started to experience a recent uptick in some of her anti-thyroid antibodies. Having been on this journey for her thyroid for many, many years, It had been some time before she'd actually seen a rise in her thyroid antibodies, and she wasn't sure why this was taking place. As I said, she ate pretty well, she had good lifestyle practices, and she exercised regularly. So, why all of a sudden was she experiencing this inflammation, this increase in anti-thyroid antibodies, and all of these annoying, but seemingly kind of unrelated physical symptoms like the weakness, fatigue, these bone density issues, and the low libido? Well, the thing is that we discovered Anne was actually going through these early stages of her menopause journey, and one of the first reproductive hormones that had started to decline for her was her testosterone. This is interesting because we often don't think of women and testosterone in the same category of importance. You've maybe watched my other video about men and low testosterone. Of course, when I'm working with men in my practice, identifying some of the similarities between hypothyroidism and low testosterone in men is actually a little bit easier to do than it is with women. In Anne's case, a full hormone workup showed that her female reproductive hormones were not only imbalanced, but her estrogen, her estradiol, and her total testosterone and her free testosterone had started to dwindle pretty rapidly. Now, the thing with Anne, and like a lot of my clients, is that she actually didn't have a baseline hormone test to compare these current results with. I encourage all of my clients, especially my female clients, to get a hormone baseline test, whether it's a saliva hormone test, something that you can do with a pretty easy kit at home and mail it off to the lab, and your results will be sent to your practitioner, either your integrative physician, your board certified holistic nutrition therapist, or another allied health practitioner that you're working with. Or to get a serum test, a complete workup of all of your hormones, so that before you start perimenopause or menopause, you actually know what your peak hormones looked like before they started to change. But we knew in Anne's case, based on her symptoms in particular, and some of the anecdotal references that she made, as I said, to that feeling of weakness and obviously her low libido, that seeing the corresponding low total testosterone and the low free testosterone was something of note. There are some really important roles that testosterone plays in a woman's body. Again, today I'm just focusing on women and the role that these androgens, hormones, play in a woman's health. So, of course, testosterone has a lot of important functions for women as well as for men. So, in men, of course, the development of the male reproductive organs and secondary sexual characteristics like facial hair, a jawline, upper body mass, etc. But in women, we see that, of course, testosterone also helps to support muscle mass by increasing protein synthesis from foods in the diet, and also cognition, amazingly enough. Now, Anne, in this particular case study, was not noticing particular issues with her thought process. She wasn't feeling the brain fog or the slow thought processes that sometimes can be related to low testosterone. But surely we have seen some studies that mention how testosterone levels are shown to be lower in those who are experiencing cognition, memory, recall, and mood disorders, including Alzheimer's. The thing that's most important to know, especially in Anne's case, was that healthy levels of testosterone do protect and benefit your bone mineral density. Perhaps Anne's ankle sprain and wrist fracture were related to those rapid declines in testosterone. Other things that testosterone can help with are insulin sensitivity, helping to regulate healthy blood sugar in the body, and also protection for the heart. And of course, finally, supporting a healthy libido. And some other things that maybe we often don't think about. Maintaining our energy and helping with things like our mood as well. So the things that were affecting Anne that were actually causing this decrease in her testosterone obviously was her age. She'd reached her late 40s and was clearly entering into perimenopause and menopause. And as all of us get older, our sex hormones decrease. Testosterone is no exception. However, this doesn't mean that we all experience a rapid decline in testosterone in the same way that Anne did. Now, one of the things that can also cause a decrease in testosterone is stress. And in 2020 in particular, I know we've all been experiencing maybe a little bit more than our normal amount of stress. One of the things that Anne and I talked about at length, even though she had some good lifestyle practices in place already, was that stress maybe was catching up with her. There's something in endocrinology called the pregnenolone steal. We also call it the cortisol steal, which basically means that when a person is in a prolonged stressed state, the body will prioritize cortisol production at the expense of healthy sex hormone balance. And there's an enzyme, which you don't need to remember, but it's called 1720 lyase. And this enzyme can become inhibited, which means that the production of androstenedione and DHEA, testosterone, and even estrogen and estradiol can also be decreased. So stress actually had been playing a role in Anne's life. Her children were getting older, they were applying to colleges. She was considering the possibility of making a career change at this point in her life, which was causing some stress. And obviously the changes in her libido and lack of intimacy with her partner was causing some stress as well. Furthermore, nutrient deficiencies as we get older can also impact our levels of testosterone in our body. For example, you've heard me talk about zinc so many times. The role that zinc plays not only in helping to support a healthy immune system, but also in helping to modulate and support healthy production of sex hormones. So nutrient deficiencies of perhaps zinc, if a person's been suffering with any immune system irregularities, that may have played a role for Anne as well. Also, vitamin D is critical to help keep all of the hormones in healthy balance. Finally, one of the things that I think can be important to know is that a diet that does not contain enough high quality animal protein can lead to something called elevated sex hormone binding globulin. Now again, you don't have to remember that special protein name, but a diet that does not contain enough natural protein made up of all of the essential amino acids necessary for the hormone production and muscle mass protection can increase sex hormone binding globulin, which means there's less free and available testosterone circulating in the bloodstream. So the interesting thing, and I'll be wrapping this up here in just a moment, thanks for staying with me for so long, but one of the reasons that I'll bring it back to Anne's Hashimoto's. One of the things that we actually notice in these changes in sex hormones is that sex hormone imbalance or sex hormone decrease actually does also affect the rate at which autoimmunity may be affecting our bodies, or in this particular case, the thyroid gland. So there are a couple of studies. I'll be posting these links in the pinned comments down below if you like to follow the research with me. But in particular with autoimmune thyroiditis, it's 5 to 10 times more common in women than in men to be experiencing lower testosterone levels. This is really interesting. So because of the very intimate and intricate relationship between thyroid hormone and the sex hormones, as a woman enters perimenopause and menopause, And some of these other factors, like I just mentioned, may play a role: stress, low dietary protein, etc., nutritional deficiencies. This decrease in testosterone can in turn affect the autoimmune thyroiditis process. This may be one of the reasons why Anne was experiencing this randomly seen uptick in her antithyroid antibodies as she entered into perimenopause and menopause. Certainly, it was difficult for us to pinpoint this type of inflammatory process to her diet or to her lifestyle, which, as I said, she had pretty well dialed in. So the hormonal regulation issues are more likely to be to blame. So in essence, I'll go ahead and wrap it up here and tell you some of the things that we worked on. In essence, Anne was a relatively healthy woman living with Hashimoto's for nearly a decade. She came to my practice to help tweak some of the things that would help to keep her healthy and aging beautifully as she entered into perimenopause and menopause. But some random recent events, such as her ankle sprain, her wrist fracture, her worsening libido, and also this sort of foreboding sense of weakness in her muscles despite exercise, were really starting to cause Anne some concern. A follow-up with her primary care physician indicated that her antithyroid antibodies were on the uptick. And what we came to realize through saliva hormone testing was that her total testosterone and her free testosterone were very, very low. We didn't have a comparison study to look at from maybe where her hormones had been in the 5 to 10 years prior. But because some of these symptoms had come on relatively quickly, it was safe to assume that both the decrease in her testosterone and some of these symptoms were related. So rather than just, going straight to a bioidentical hormone specialist to put her on a bioidentical testosterone, we realized there were some things that we could do to help with supporting her healthy natural testosterone levels in her body. So the first thing was that we did do full micronutrient testing and analysis to determine if she was missing any of the raw nutrients that were needed to help keep her healthy hormone levels in check. It turns out that she was deficient in a number of different B vitamins and some minerals, including zinc, but also copper. And we also found that although she was supplementing with vitamin D, her vitamin D levels were low because she was deficient in another fat-soluble vitamin, vitamin K. And vitamin K is a necessary cofactor for bringing up vitamin D levels to that healthy level. We talked about stress management, and we also talked about optimizing her exercise routine to focus a little less on some of the cardiovascular, which may be stressing her adrenals and causing that pregnenolone steal. In essence, our body can't always tell the difference between, say, stress from sitting in traffic or dealing with a scary situation or a financial matter or family issues versus, running on the treadmill for 45 minutes can sometimes also be perceived as internal stress. Instead, we decided to have Anne focus more on gentle stretching, strengthening, and some body weight resistant exercises to help her maintain her skeletal muscle mass. And also, because her thyroid was directly involved and she'd experienced an uptick in her antithyroid antibodies, we talked about adding in some adaptogens that would help her body not only manage stress, but also to help support both the adrenals and the thyroid. That includes ashwagandha. So ashwagandha you can learn more about in some of my other videos where I've talked about herbs that are helpful for Hashimoto's. We also started Anne on a turmeric supplement to help lower inflammation and to help with blood flow and to help act basically as a powerful antioxidant for her cells. And finally, we really optimized Anne's dietary protein. While she was consuming previously probably 45 to 65 grams of protein per day, we increased it all the way up to 90 grams per day. That sounds like a lot. It was almost double. What that basically meant was that we were increasing her animal protein intake to one serving 3 to 4 times per day. So a serving for Anne was about the size of the palm of her hand, which is about 4 to 5 ounces, focusing primarily on like grass-fed beef and bison and lamb a few times a week, but also organically raised poultry and cold water fatty fishes. It meant that Anne had to focus a lot more on this particular group of her macronutrients by getting in adequate protein. If you want to learn more about the protein benefits for the thyroid, you can watch my video about does your thyroid need protein. So after some time and implementing some of these strategies, Anne did actually notice that she started to feel better. She noticed that her mood became more stabilized. She also felt a little bit friskier and more connected with her partner. She felt like taking care of herself with some of these nutrient needs to help supplement with only what her body was really craving, and also to eat properly and to slow down some of the cardiovascular stress inducing exercises and really start nurturing and taking care of herself, that she did start to notice an overall improvement. The inherent muscle weakness went away. As I said, her libido started to bounce back a little bit, and overall she started to feel better and more like herself. So that wraps up today's case study all about the connections in perimenopause and menopause between a woman's health and her levels of testosterone. Thanks so much for watching. Be sure and check out the links below that have some great references to relevant research. And you can also visit the blog post that I have on my website that are all about whether or not your hormones are a mess and if you need to do anything to help balance them out for the betterment of your total health. Thanks so much for watching my video today. I hope you'll subscribe to my channel, like these videos, and share them with people who could use the help. Have a great day, and I'll see you soon.